viewers, today we are going to analyze a great novel called Gora, written by the Nobel Laureate of India, Rabindranath Tagore. This man was a great literary figure who contributed a lot to Indian literature and also had a prominent place among well-known figures of Renaissance. He was not only an architect of modern Indian literature, but also the modern Indian mind. He was a versatile individual. He was a poet, short story writer, novelist, dramatist, essayist, painter and composer of songs. Gandhi called him the Great Sentinel. Now let's try to know more about this great novel called Gora. This novel is considered as very complex of all the 12 novels written by Rabindranath Tagore. Undoubtedly a classic, this epic debates multiple issues and concerns that seem contemporary even today and very much relevant to the current scenario of our country. This book is a reflection and analysis of the diverse social life in colonial India. It is about contradictions of one's own beliefs, which are as a result of changing times, society and its multiple influences on the people, their thinking, ideologies and philosophies. It reflects the overall transformation seen and sensed within an individual and the society in general. Gora, that took birth in the year 1910, is Tagore's fifth novel and is generally considered as his masterpiece. Its broad canvas has the masterstrokes of the social, cultural, religious and political life of the 19th century urban middle class Bengal. It was a landmark in the history of the evolution of the novels written in Bengali language. Tagore ideally attacks social taboos through his play. The Bengali society, with its traditional orthodox Hindus and the liberal Brahmo Samaj, is presented in the novel in a unique way. The very purpose of creating Gora was to save the society from the clutches of oppression, caste system and above all a strong voice to protest against alienating women from the mainstream. The novel is woven around Tagore's own transition from Hindu revivalism to universal brotherhood, from nationalism to internationalism, from acceptance to rigid Brahmoism and Hinduism to the religion of a man. It was translated into English by W. Pearson in 1924. Tagore struggled painstakingly to assimilate the West in his imagination without giving up his cultural integrity. This novel gives the readers an insight into the battle of emotions that Indians fought towards whites and their supporters. The novel is an interface between an orthodox Hindu and liberal Brahmo Samaj followers. Gora, the protagonist of the novel, is a staunch supporter of Hinduism. The structure of the main plot is so strong that it convinces the readers that a strong India based on the tenets of Hinduism is definitely possible. But the climax comes as a shrewd shock to the readers. The author proves that such a belief is an illusion. At the end, most of the time the readers are left little confused. Though this novel is written in 1909, Tagore viewed India how India should be, and for that reason the work deserves the title The Foundational Novel of India. The novel is set against the atmosphere of political excitement and religious debates that characterized the first decades of the last century in Bengal and in India. In the words of Asit Bandhopadhyaya, Gora is not only an epoch-making novel of modern Indian literature, it is certainly comparable with any epic novel of Europe in shape and size, in treatment and in execution. Now let's see what other great thinkers have to comment on this. In a similar vein, Nihar Ranjan Roy, the eminent historian, eulogized Gora for its amplitude of ancient epics. Sukumar Sen, the renowned scholar, hailed it as a Mahabharata of modern India, while Tagore's biographer Krishna Kriplani praised the novel as the epic of India in transition. Gora mirrors Tagore's idealism and ideals about India, his thoughts, his activities, his anguish, his dreams, and also his disillusionment. Rabindranath Tagore's grandfather, Dwarkanath Tagore, joined Ram Mohan Roy, and both can be rightly called as founders of Brahmo Samaj. Several of Rabindranath's brothers were devoted members. The Samaj was actually headquartered in the Tagore home in Calcutta for a time when Rabindranath was a boy and Keshub Sen was taking over the leadership from Debendranath. A schism occurred in the Samaj which introduced hostility between Sen and the Tagore family. Sen promoted a kind of universalism which had strains of Christianity. The Tagores remained with what came to be known as Adi Brahma Samaj. Adi means original, which preached Hindu Brahmoism and Indian nationalism. In 1884, he became its leader and editor of its journal. Eventually, there was a compromise between Sen and the Tagores, and Rabindranath himself supported Hindu Brahmoism as a true reformed Hindu, which was a blend of national pride and a religious universalism. Gora was born in 1907 when the nationalist resistance to British imperialism was growing. The Western modernism was trying hard to influence the loyalty of young Indians. In other words, the young Indians were being lured by Westerners towards their culture. The novel reflects the tension between orthodox Hinduism and varied facets of modernism, represented eventually by one of the three branches of Brahmoism, a conflict with which Tagore himself was wrestling. This module will examine Tagore's effort in Gora to give balanced voice to several perspectives to show that the human and the humane appeal of each to display and critique the narrow, sectarian, closed-minded and chauvinistic attitudes of different individuals of the society. Gora is a story set in the troubled times when the Bengali society in Calcutta was divided into traditional orthodox Hindus and modernized liberal thinking Brahmos, shaped by Brahma Samaj. The Hindus were the staunch followers and took pride in their noble practices and ceremonials, while the Brahmos were in constant clashes with orthodoxy and vehemently protested idol worship, caste system, etc. Yet, both communities were not free of their own hypocrisies, conflicts and flaws. There were also the times when the English education gained momentum across the society and the intellectual awareness amongst the youth was at rise. The term Brahmos here is not to be confused with Brahmin as in general usage. We need to be little careful when we try to understand these terms. Gora, a spiritual and a political dilemma, is a central character of the novel with the same name as the novel. The word Gora means a white person in Bengali. The novel describes many aspects of colonial India, which includes effects of colonialism, social structure, religious fanaticism, intelligence, traditions, patriotism and very important thing, the changing status of women in the Indian society. The society was experiencing a change that was seen and sensed within an individual and the society in general. The differences between religious and religious fanaticism, ruler and the ruled were widely observed and studied. Gora is one of the finest and complex novels penned down by Rabindranath Tagore. The novel is very contemporary in its addressing of a number of issues applicable to our country's current scenario and reflection of the complex diversity of social life in colonial India. It could be considered as an epic of our country at the crucial period of struggle for independence. It describes the social structure in the region of Bengal before independence. The identity of each of the characters as well as India is questioned. The characters and their life are beautifully presented. The novel is vast in scope and rich in thoughts. Each chapter ends with the reader craving for more. The story describes how the society sets boundaries, cultivates thoughts and places expectation on the young people who are becoming adults, and is a mixture of love and duty. The story gives the reader an insight into the conditions prevailing in the Bengal region of the colonial India. The novel begins with a character called Binoy Bhushan, a highly educated Bengali young man who actively participated in socio-religious debates on education and national priorities. He also expressed his strong views on the things that were then considered to be matters to be dealt by women, namely the women's relationship within and outside their gender. As the story progresses, Binoy meets a female character called Sucharita, the daughter of his neighbor Paresh Babu, face to face in a road accident. This meeting is like a makeover for Binoy, who otherwise had limited interactions with women except for those in his family. For him, women were just a symbol of maternity, which is again symbolized by another character called Anandamoyi, or a person who spends her entire life serving men at home. For the first time, he looks at Sucharita's reflection in the mirror. A face lowered in loving anxiety glowed with a tenderness, which was to Binoy a newly manifested wonder of nature. It is interesting to note that Binoy does not find courage to establish a romantic eye contact with Sucharita. Instead, he prefers to admire her reflection in the mirror. Her beautiful face mesmerizes him. Binoy is afraid of the opposition from the fervent Brahmanical traditions and Brahmo Samaj and believes that they might not approve of their union. Binoy is a soft-spoken and easygoing gentleman and is in constant dilemma about the rights and wrongs of the society and his own community. Gaur Mohan, also known as Gora by his friends, literally means white-skinned. Gora senses the resistance from the members of the Brahmo Samaj. Despite that, Gora develops feelings for Sucharita and Binoy falls in love with Lolita, making them the main protagonists. Paresh Babu, father of the daughters, is a refined gentleman and he never placed restrictions on his daughters. Lolita is much ahead of her times, and Sucharita, on the other hand, maintains her conduct even while undergoing an agitation within herself for being attracted to Gora, who has a completely different mindset. Others, like Anandamoyi, described symbolically as Mother India, is a lovable character in sharp contrast to Baroda Sundari and Harimohini. Baroda Sundari and Haran Babu as relentless Brahmos, Krishna Dayal and Harimohini as fanatic Hindus, Mohim and Avinash as hypocritical part of society are aptly described along with their contribution and justification to the current status of then society of Bengal. The novel takes an exit turn when Gora finds out that he is not a Hindu at all. This comes as a shock to the readers of the novel. At the end of the novel, Gora reaches the stage of Anandamoyi, who has more liberal views on religion. But during his journey, he is also found to be seen sympathizing with the Muslims. The story takes shape when two Hindu boys come in contact with Paresh Babu and his family, who represent the other facet of society, the Brahmos. They have adopted a more open-minded lifestyle, and even when the ladies of the house enjoy equal freedom to that of men. Sucharita and Lolita are heroines who are educated but with different perspectives towards life. The later character is much ahead of her times, and during the course of the story undergoes transition from a confused, guilt-ridden, meek girl to a brave, pragmatic girl who boldly accepts her feelings for Binoy. Sucharita, on the other hand, maintains her dignity throughout, even while facing a conflict within herself for being attracted to an opposite mindset personality, that is Gora. Gora is presented to the readers as a voice for the reformist Brahmins rather than that of an enlightened individual. Fanaticism was at peak during those days. This tragedy of Gora's fate is comparable to the fate of Indian women who could be the best homemakers, or they can become like Kali or Shakti, ready to step out of home to free the society of all evils, but never as an ordinary woman in the educated Bengali society of that time. Sucharita is in love with Gora, but she does not fit into Gora's principles. Ironically, she stands by him, especially when Gora found himself alone in the crowd of millions. Lolita is open-minded and modern, and eventually Binoy wins her heart. We see Gora's mother Anandamoyi articulating her reservation against rigid norms of Brahminical religion and questions the authenticity of the rule to decide the identity of an individual through caste, class and gender. The debate is between tradition and modernity, with both sides coming strong and vacillating for a deserved space, says the director. There is a gradual awakening in Gora, who realizes that humanity is the only religion that exists and the society should strictly imbibe and follow it. To conclude, the novel relates to the odyssey of a young man called Gora, who evolves from the narrowness of the institutionalized religion he believed in to disillusionment and enlightenment as a human being. The journey is surely eased by the fact that he had a liberal-minded Hindu surrogate mother in Anandamoyi. She was much ahead of her times and society in understanding the spirit of humanism in the Hindu way of life. She had a liberal streak, always trying to assimilate the other ways of living, thinking and relating. The novel has a unique style of characterization. The writer has skillfully used this device to introduce his characters who are pitted against a social background with staunch individualistic approaches to life, ideologies and religion. Tagore uses these characters and their stories to depict every single concern of the society, mainly the religious narrow-mindedness. Hence, the novel has subplots, intermediary stories and events which, though sometimes seem to wander away from the main theme, add on to the beauty of the story. The first character, that is the protagonist of the novel, Gora, is a staunch practitioner of Hinduism, and he practices his religion with utmost pride and respect through conviction and strict austerity. He is a natural leader with laudable oratory skills, and he has a fair and tall physique with a resonating voice. However, his candor and his attitude makes him seem an arrogant, self-asserting, violent person who thrusts his opinion onto others. But Gora at heart is an eternal optimist, dreaming about his ideal Bharatavarsha, a prosperous and happy India, which according to him is achieved by uniting all classes under the huge umbrella of Hinduism. As a person, he is highly patriotic and sympathetic. He cannot tolerate injustice and high society exploitation of the downtrodden. The second important character is Binoy Bhushan. Binoy Bhushan is a good friend of Gora. He is a soft-spoken and sympathetic gentleman who initially comes across as a mere shadow of Gora, but later emerges as a more genuine and self-analyzing person. He is an individual with a high conscience who cannot purposely hurt anyone or refuse anything. And he is in constant dilemma about the rights and wrongs of life. This is the character with which most of us can identify ourselves. He symbolizes the uncertainty that we undergo in our lives at various stages. He is synonymous with the contradictions and ceaseless internal conflicts which constantly trouble within us, between the heart and the brain, selfishness and humanity, good and the bad. The third character is Sucharita. Tagore introduces Sucharita, a central female character, as a symbol of nature. And as the novel progresses, slowly but imperceptibly, he transforms this symbol into a form and figure and provides her with very independent nature. A motherly figure is the profile or the character of Anandamoyi. In the novel, Anandamoyi is shown as raising an Irish-British orphan as her own child. Well, he is none other than Gora again. Even though she is not his biological mother, she holds herself strong amidst societal pressures and shunning to raise a Gora child as a part of her own family. This is one of the first individualistic traits depicted in Anandamoyi. The character of Anandamoyi has been shown to be reflected in so many ways in the novel, with liberal and tolerant attitudes of her finding reflections in others who Gora comes to contact with and from whom he learns something in his life. Another character is Baradashundari. She is a Brahmo Samaj woman who is doubtful of everything that is Hindu. Barada's change is superficial. Tagore introduces the hypocrisy of the modern educated class through the voice of Baradashundari, who has a sour taste for idol worship, traditional clothes, religious names and everything that is non-Brahmo. The philosophy of Barada's version of Brahmo Samaj is not in the essence of Raja Ram Mohan Roy's teachings, but these are all social nuances the Brahmos had picked up from the British. She has an anglicized version of Brahmo Samaj, which really does not fit with the tenets of Brahmo Samaj. Nanda, another character, is a youthful son of a carpenter. He has been a very accomplished cricket player. In the mixed company of the elite and the subaltern members of the sports and cricket club founded by Gora in the neighborhood, Nanda stood easily first in every kind of manly exercise. A line describing Nanda. He stood easily first in every kind of manly exercise. Nanda could have been an ideal signifier for the virile young generation of the emerging nation in its anti-colonial struggle. But Nanda dies even before the early glimpses of his potential could be noticed. And the manner in which dies, that is, spread of tetanus infection in a small wound inflicted by a chisel as Nanda had been treated by a local exorcist, speaks volumes of chasm existing between the elite, nationalist projects of fighting with the imperial rules and setting up of indigenous institution of nation state and the real mass of illiterate subaltern classes. These classes, living amidst poverty, superstition, caste system, unhygienic surroundings, were surrounded by many other social evils, and it was very difficult to have access to modern society and raise the standards of their living. The very objective of any colonial rule is meticulous and ruthless attack on the culture and heritage of the colonized force or race. This often results in a total loss or at least destroying the sense of self of the colonized people. The masculine self of the colonizer labels the self of the colonized as effeminate. In reaction to this, the nationalist consciousness of the colonized people often tries to replicate the manliness of the colonial masters in an act of fashioning a nationalist self. In the context of Indian colonial history, we see development on similar lines. Very base of this whole play is based on a popular issue of those days called Ideal National Self. The masterpiece produced by Tagore needs no words to establish its dominance. It is too complex to simply summarize in few paragraphs. The story is full of debates, arguments, contemplations and reflections that may be interpreted in various ways. Gora firmly believes that India can gain freedom and foothold in the modern society only by strengthening her traditional religious roots. He ignores the dogmas of the society and continues to look at the brighter side of the religion in bringing unity to a scattered Samaj. Gora addresses the people, saying that we all want to live by each other's happiness but not by each other's misery, that we don't want to hate and despise one another. This is a strong tenet of his ideal national self. The world can embrace and accommodate everyone. The life can be free and beautiful, but the greed has poisoned human souls. It has cordoned the world with hate and goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. Gora says that we the people have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. We have the power to make a life free and beautiful and to make this life a wonderful adventure. Thus, in the name of democracy, let's use that power and let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give us the future in old age and security. Gora had lofty ideas of freedom, nationalism and modern India. He further says that by the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill their promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Thus, he inspires the people to fight and fulfill that promise. He asks people to fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. He asks to fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. I hope you enjoyed the interesting element of this novel called Gora. Let's also look at several other interesting literary devices in the next session. Thank you.